Hello everyone, I'm here with my book. I was going to call them book empties. The books I read in September. And I did get through 6 books, and a lot of them were very spooky. Some paranormal, some Victorian Gothic, and yeah, just a great time of the year to start getting into those books. So the first book that I did read, and this is the second book in the series, and this is by Deanna Raybourn, and this is A Perilous Undertaking, and it's a Veronica Speedwell mystery. So there's, I think, about 8 books in the series, and this is the second one, and I absolutely love this series. The first book, just a quick synopsis, this young woman is very independent. She was brought up by aunts. She is an orphan, and her aunts have passed away, and she's kind of on her own, and she travels the world. She's a butterfly specialist. She collects them and studies them. She's been all over the world by herself, which is unheard of back in the 1880s. And very intelligent, very smart. And in the first book, there's an attempted kidnapping. She finds out people are trying to kill her, and why they're trying to kill her is revealed in the end of the story, which I won't give away. And during the first book, she is dropped off at this gentleman's home, and he is called Stoker, and he has traveled the world also. He's had quite the life. He's an adventurer, a naturalist, etc., etc. And yeah, when they're trying to find out why people were killing her in the first one, the banter between Veronica, I always want to call her Victoria, Veronica and Stoker is just absolutely hilarious. The sexual tension, you can cut it with a knife. So yeah, the kind of the secret was kind of resolved why people were killing her in the first book. And the second book, there is a murder, and they're called by Queen Victoria's daughter to help solve this particular murder. And yeah, I just love these two. These are my favorite couple of any books I've read. It's just so witty, the banter. And this one actually I kind of maybe liked a little bit better than the first one, because they're starting to delve more into Stoker's past and some of it, his adventures and what happened in the past and his family and that sort of thing. And they start getting a little bit closer, and yeah, they're just such fun books. Great humor, great mysteries, great characters. I just really like that series. And the next book I read was A Secret History of Witches by Louisa Morgan. And this takes place over 5 generations. Each generation, the women are witches. Not everyone gets like full powers. Some of them only have a few powers. Other people have greater powers and that sort of thing. And it starts off in 1821, Brittany, France. And this family, they're travelers or gypsies. And there's like, I think 5 or 6 sisters in this group with their husbands and children and that sort of thing. And people are suspecting that they are witches, so they have to flee France and go to England, where they settle. And then it follows the rest of the generations right up till World War II. So this one, I really did like some of the characters. They were good witches. They just sort of kept the magic to themselves because they didn't want to be found out. They didn't do it to harm people or anything like that. They're healers and that sort of thing. So their magic was used for pretty good purposes. There was one particular woman in here from one generation that wasn't the nicest person in the world, but so yeah, it was pretty good. I give like maybe a 3.7 or so. It was entertaining. It wasn't maybe the best witch story I've ever read. It's certainly not the worst, but it was entertaining enough. Some of the generations stories were a little bit kind of slow in that, and others were a little bit better than others, but it was a pretty good read. And this is Creatures of Will and Temper by Molly Tanzer, and this takes place in the, I think, 1880s in Victorian London. And there's these two young women who live in a town close to London, and the younger sister is 17 and she wants to become an art critic. She's very interested in art. And her older sister is what they call a spinster because she's 28, she's unmarried. And as a hobby, she does the art of fencing, which not a lot of women did back then. And one summer, they go to live with their uncle for the summer in London. And while they're there, the older sister starts taking classes at this fencing school because she wants to improve her skills, and the younger daughter gets caught up in sort of the art world. And the older sister who takes the fencing lessons, her instructor is actually, he reveals that he goes after diabolist or demon worshippers and kind of hunts them down and that sort of thing. And then the older sister realizes her younger sister, the crowd she's hanging out with are probably diabolists too. So she's trying to save her sister. But there's quite a twist at the end. So yeah, this one is pretty good. It's a very good atmosphere. I really like her writing style. It's really quite lyrical in areas. So they're talking about all the arts and that sort of thing. The senses are how we appreciate life. In spite of this, the senses are often maligned and misunderstood. The worship of the senses is considered to be frivolous at best and immoral at worst. The art that tantalizes our eyes, the music that delights our ears, the scents that ensorcel our noses, they are celebrated only when they are under the control of some governing body, whether it's the Royal Academy or the church and that sort of thing. So, yeah, maybe maybe about a 3.7 or so, maybe a 4. I did really like the writing style, and yeah, it was actually quite enjoyable. And this is Beloved Poison by E.S. Thompson, and I think there's like 5 books in the series. I had the first 3, had to hunt around for these. They're not easy to find, but this is the first book in the series, Beloved Poison. This is so atmospheric and gothic. This takes place in 1850 London, England. And it kind of revolves around this very, very old hospital. I think it was built in like 11th or 12th century, and this is like 1850. So it revolves around this apothecary and his son, who is going to take over the business. They supply all the herbs and pharmaceuticals and that for the pharmacy, and they live right on the hospital grounds. Now, the son is actually his daughter, and the reason she has to disguise herself as an apothecary, as a man, to do the apothecary duties is because it's just not allowed. Women are not allowed to become apothecaries. And so she has to disguise herself as a man to kind of inherit her father's position as apothecary. So this fellow comes to town. I can't remember his exact title, but they do want to, they have to empty out the graveyard near the hospital in order to build a new railroad area. And so they have to tear down this building and that. So he's kind of inspecting the hospital and supervising emptying out this graveyard. And in the chapel, they happen to stumble across these 6 tiny little coffins, and inside there's an effigy of a baby, and there's like dried blood on the rags and that sort of thing inside these little mini coffins. And from there, things start happening, people start dying, strange things are happening, and it's kind of a murder mystery kind of thing, but it's just so atmospheric. Like the way he writes, you can almost smell how bad London probably smelled back then, the descriptions of the scents and the fog and just the eeriness. Like, he just captures it so well. And the characters, he does such a good job with the characters. Almost like you know these people, or you certainly know someone like these people. Yeah, I just, the atmosphere, the characters. There's a few things that were a little bit off, like how they, I don't know, sort of the way they interacted with each other, like the apothecary and the doctors was a little bit off. But I mean, other than that, it was just really, really good. So looking forward to reading the other ones. This is City of Ghost by Victoria Schwab. So she also writes under the name V.E. Schwab. I think she does more of her adult type books under the name V.E. Schwab, and then sort of middle grade, young adult, I think it's under Victoria Schwab, something like that. But this is certainly kind of a middle grade, early mid-teen kind of book, but it was still pretty good. It certainly was creepy. So this young girl, when she was like 10 or 11, she had a near drowning, and she was actually rescued by this ghost of this like teenage boy. And since then, he's kind of hung around, and they just become very good friends, and wherever she goes, and like she just chit-chat with this ghost and that. Her parents are actually, they write books and do like documentaries on hauntings and that sort of thing. The mother really believes in it. The father is more scientific. He doesn't believe in it, any of that. He wants scientific proof. But they're asked to go to Edinburgh, Scotland, and do like a documentary on the spookiest areas of Edinburgh. And this girl, she can actually, because she basically drowned and came back to life, she can go between the veils, that thin veil between the living and the dead. She can kind of go back and forth and that sort of thing. And she does the same thing in Edinburgh with kind of scary, very scary results and that. So, yeah, I mean, if I was like 11, 12, 13 years old, this probably scare the crap out of me, and I'd be awake all night with the lights on. But yeah, I'm a little bit older now, and a little bit, and yeah, I mean, it was creepy, but I mean, it didn't scare me or anything. But if you have someone around that age who does like that kind of story, this one is actually, it was pretty good actually. And this is When the Reckoning Comes by Latanya McQueen. This takes place in North Carolina, and 10 years ago, this woman fled the small town, and she never wanted to return. She didn't have the best upbringing or childhood and that sort of thing. The small town in the south here was very segregated, very racist. She actually did make friends with this white girl. The narrator's a black woman, and when she was young, she did make friends with this white girl, and they were kind of teased and tormented about being friends and all that sort of thing. And then one day, her and her boyfriend went to this abandoned plantation that was near town, and something very scary happened, and she fled back home. And then she found out her boyfriend had been arrested for a murder, that they found someone near the plantation dead, and he was charged with murder, but he got off and that sort of thing. And then 10 years later, she's never gone back. She doesn't want to go back. But her friend, her white friend from childhood, phoned up and said, "I'm getting married, I want you to come." And she's like, "Oh, I don't really want to." But she did want to kind of find out what happened to her boyfriend, so she reluctantly goes to the wedding. And she finds out when she gets there that the plantation was renovated and made into like an inn, like a tourist attraction. So you have all these black people serving these white people. Everyone who works there is black. And they actually have like, if you walk around the plantation grounds, you see these people working in the fields like they were slaves in a field. And she's thinking, oh God, this is like totally inappropriate. Like, what am I doing here? And just some very paranormal things happened the evening before the wedding and the day of the wedding and that sort of thing. So it certainly is very eye-opening what happened to the slaves back then, how horrific it was. And I think that's maybe the point she was trying to bring across. Here they had this, they reopened this plantation where horrific things happened, and they want to make it into a nice little inn and have all these black people serving the white people, and they're going to reenact these scenes of slaves working and all this, and it's just like, what? that's not appropriate. So yeah, it wasn't bad. I don't know, 3/4 of the way till the ending, just kind of, I don't know, I didn't like it too much. It kind of got a little weird, but it certainly showed how horrific slavery was, and that we should respect this place and not try to glamorize it, which is just totally inappropriate. But anyway, maybe about 3.5 stars. I mean, it certainly was creepy, and you kind of had this level of tension throughout, but it wasn't bad. I just give it like 3.5. So that's the books I read, and I did finish Slewfoot, which was quite good, and then I'm on my second book of the month, Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. And I did read, the first book of his I read was The First Time I Lied, which I really liked, and I've heard good things about this Home Before Dark. So like 25 years ago, this young girl, they moved into this rambling Victorian estate in the Vermont woods, and literally 3 weeks later they fled. And the father eventually wrote a book about his experiences at this house, and her father passes away, and she decides to go back to the house to renovate it, to put it up for sale, and then all these spooky things start happening. So that's what I'm reading right now. All right, that's it. Yeah, great time of the month now or time of the year to start reading some gothic, spooky, paranormal stuff. It's just such a great time to snuggle up and read some of this. So I hope everyone's doing great, and happy reading for October, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.